free agency's first wave comes to an end. We see how some of these roster builds are shaken out, and we also see how some of the draft rankings are shaken out. Who is worth moving up for, and which teams will be most likely listening to offers in this year's NFL draft? Where are the trades coming? On today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making this your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love our everydayers. Thanks for subscribing up. If you're not subscribed yet, please do so now. Hit pause and hit that subscribe button. If you're already subscribed, hit the thumbs up. If you're on YouTube, let us know that you stopped by. You can always say hi or get a question for this week's mailbag in at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL, or in the YouTube comments. And if you're new to the program, welcome. Subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcasts. And today's podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. And right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. It's March Madness time. And all you got to do is go to FanDuel.com to get started. So I had this idea because I'm doing mock drafts and I'm looking at teams. And, this happens a lot with every fan base. And, I cover the San Francisco 49ers here on the network. And everyone's like, oh, got to trade down from 11. It's like, okay, well, sure. Listen to offers, but who's trading up? And who are those prospects that teams might want to move up for? And so I think let's then identify the teams that are most likely listening to offers and where those spots are. Because I'm doing mock drafts, and the really what came to me was I always show up at pick number 8 in the Carolina Panthers, and I think this is a team that could really benefit from moving down, collecting picks, and you always feel like you're forcing a player there that maybe they could get a little bit later, or maybe a similar player a little bit later. You put Jalen Walker at 8 to the Carolina Panthers, but they could get James Pierce a little bit later, or Walker can still be there 5 picks later, right? But then it's like, okay, well, who's the player that a team might move up for, right? And then so your mind starts to go to quarterbacks and all that. So I think you end up having to just start at number 1, Matt, right? For me,
yeah.
Go through the teams. Who's moving down? Are the Tennessee Titans listening to offers if you're in charge?
So let's spend a lot of time on them and these top 3 picks in particular. Yeah. But yeah. A common theme to me, though, is what positions do people trade up for? I mean, is it Genty or Warren? Probably not, history shows, but they're 2 of the better players in the draft. You mentioned the edge rush situation. Abdul Carter's number 1 on everyone's board, but coincidentally this morning I did my top 5 edge rushers, and I left 5 really good ones off that I could see going in the top 50, and is the difference between 2 and 6 that remarkable that if I can't pick up a future second or, a player or whatever, that I should consider that? So again, last year's draft is so much different than this one. I mean, 6 first-round quarterbacks and all those tackles, where this year, maybe the price of Sanders or even Dart or Shuck or one of those guys gets pushed up because of their position. But the tackles I can't imagine are as coveted as usual. The wide receiver group isn't special. I just don't know who you trade up for. And I think that's going to be a common theme of this podcast,
At this point, it seems more and more likely that Cam Ward is the pick at number 1 for the Tennessee Titans. And
yes.
If you made that decision, you almost stop listening to offers. But if you're willing to listen to offers, that means you're not quite sold. And
right.
Knowing that there's still a blue chip guy that could be there. And we left off yesterday's episode, Matt, talking about the New York Giants, and they're bringing in Jameis Winston. They feel like a team that could be motivated. Could we see a 3-to-1 swap? Is there a deal out there you can see making sense between, say, the New York Giants going up to get a quarterback at number 1 and just solidifying it? And could the Tennessee Titans talk themselves into thinking, yeah, you know what? We're at a different stage of our rebuild. We could build some other things here. Let's get a blue chipper at pick 3 instead and have extra draft picks and maybe hit the quarterback thing next year.
That's the thing I really wanted to explore right off the bat, too, is, okay, I think Ward will be the first pick in the draft. I almost know it. And I think right now Tennessee's very happy to do that, and they're happy about it. Great. We build a line. We'll probably have some early picks in the future too to get other things, but we get our guy. There is a fan base ownership situation here too. We can, jumpstart the enthusiasm around our team. They've been one of the most banal teams in the league over the last 10 years without question. So at least there's that. I mean, I've heard McNair comparisons, which would probably even get exemplified more if he ended up in Tennessee. But what's the smart business? What's to be the best football team? Do you take them at 1 and I would lean towards taking them at 1. But I was listening to Daniel Jeremiah's most recent podcast, and he's not the first one to say it, but just reiterated with me that usually, like if you look at the trade value charts for draft picks, the Jimmy Johnson one or whatever people use nowadays, there's almost always like a 20% tax for a quarterback. Like the Bryce Young move was a little more expensive to get to 1 and, things like that. So if the Giants call me and I say, I'm not real interested in moving, but I want next year's first, I want number 3, and I want your early second rounder, and maybe I'll throw you a 5 or a 4 or something like that. It gets me to the table. I mean, that's hard to deny because at 3, okay, I'll take Carter or Hunter. Okay. I mean, those are big time players. We could use all 3 of those positions that those 2 players play. At the beginning of the second round, I would probably take a Jackson Dart or a Shuck or somebody like that and have him compete with Levis. That's not super exciting, but you might strike lightning in a bottle over the course of the year. And if they stink, you're going to pick high anyway. And you have the Giants' first round pick next year. Chances are they're going to stink and you're going to mix. And you also have a second that's really early that could be one of those edge rushers we talked about. The BC kid, you don't get Carter, but you take the BC kid or Mike Green or whoever, or it's Ibuka who fell out of the first round and you're sitting there with all your positions filled and 2 early firsts next year. I would understand it, and I could see a desperate Giants team entertaining that.
I'm looking at the Giants right now and looking at the draft.
Let's imagine they only have Winston on draft day. I'm trading them whatever you want.
So the Giants have 2 third-round picks, and they have the first pick in round 3, and then they have a comp pick at 99.
Okay.
So I could see the Giants very easily saying, okay, we won't trade our second, but what about next year's first and a third? So pick 65 this year. The first pick in round 3, next year first round pick. You're only going up 2 spots. That's only 800 points on the chart, which is almost exactly what their second and third round picks are this year. So they say, okay, you can have all 3 of our first picks. You can have a second and third, or you can have next year's first, and we keep this year's second. Do you think that would be enough to get it done? And do you think that would be a better move for the New York Giants than to do whatever they're doing at quarterback right now with their veteran quarterbacks? Or they could sit there and say, oh, we'll just take Shedeur Sanders potentially. But it feels like all of the quarterback options they have now would be paired with a rookie quarterback if you're the New York Giants. And is Shedeur Sanders worthy of the pick at 3 just flat out, which is the thing the Giants really need.
That's the next conversation to me is I wonder. So I want to go back to your trade in a second, but I subscribe to Todd McShay's new situation. And he kind of been putting it out there that the Browns and Shedeur could very much be linked. And they're one of the teams that Dion's very happy with. And Garrett came back. And maybe that's even part of the Garrett situation. We're just going to take Sanders, Miles, but you guys are going to be the face of both sides of the defense. And usually that doesn't work out well in Browns history, but it could be the case where Giants don't even get a crack at him.
Yeah, they could be at 3 and be like, you know what, we've talked ourselves into it, or didn't even need to. Like, we love quarterbacks.
He's good enough, yeah.
And still can't get it.
And then the Patriots are thrilled because then they get Carter or, Hunter or whatever.
That's an angle I didn't really think about with Myles Garrett too. The change of heart. Money is one thing, but then they say, hey, we're going to take Shedeur at 2.
It can't be, we're going to trade for Kenny Pickett in your life.
Is our answer, and he's going to be awesome, and sold him on Shedeur with the second pick in the draft.
See, that's a hunch I've been having all along. And Todd wrote that in his newsletter saying, it's funny now that Todd doesn't work for ESPN, he can kind of divulge some things he hears behind the scenes a little bit more. He's more for himself. And basically said a handful of teams at the Combine felt like Sanders didn't care if he impressed them at all. Wasn't like he was a bad guy, but it was like
he knew something.
He knew something. And one of the teams that had no problems with them was the Browns. And Dion has no problem with the Browns. And what other avenues do they really have? I mean, it can't be Pickett. I mean, come on.
You know, and that's interesting. I would have thought that Browns would be the team that Dion would be trying to get him not to go to.
You would think so too, right? I mean, just
but
history.
He might also be angling on just trying to get his son drafted as early as possible. So
true. I mean, going second overall,
Browns, that's better than falling out of the top 10.
So back to Giants-Titans conversations. If the Giants by then have a strong inkling that it's going to go Ward Sanders, the trade offer you threw out there, I would do if I'm the Giants. Now, if I'm the Titans, I really want the Giants' second-round pick this year because it's 35th or whatever, you know, and maybe I can pry it out of you. I'm getting next year's. I'm getting 3. I went 35, and what do I have to give you?
All right, let's talk about
That's
this.
Where it gets hairy, yeah.
Which teams could get on the move? Who would be motivated to go up? And what are those prospects that might move the needle for teams?
Okay. I think that's going to be hard to find.
Let's get into that next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on all the action like never before, because right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters, 200 extra on Cinderella stories, or who's cutting down the nets. And if you got your eye on that underdog this year, FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props all tournament long. Tournament games happening almost every day. There's something exciting always happening to bet on. Live in-game betting as well, which makes it even more fun and adds another extra wrinkle to those college hoops games. So visit FanDuel.com or download the app to get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. That is FanDuel.com. Okay, so it's clear as mud, as always. You think you have an idea what things you're going to think of, and I tend to think that Shedeur Sanders, and I felt like he's falling, and then you get these other reports, and you think, man, quarterback's so important. What are the New York Giants doing? What are the Cleveland Browns doing? And could it go quarterback 1, 2 still? And is that better for any of these teams? And I just feel like the Titans are in a situation where they could wait easier than the Giants could from a decision maker's standpoint.
Yeah, I bet they have more job security.
Right. So if the offer is there, you take it. And if the offer is not there, then you take the quarterback. But if you're willing to move out of a quarterback, that means
quick question for you, though. If you're a Titans fan and you entered week 1 with Levis and Dart, have you lost all hope, or are you kind of excited in your thing and knowing that you have the Giants' first round pick in your back pocket, which could be QB1 next year?
Like me,
I'm cool with it.
Me personally, right now, you wouldn't even need extra picks. If the Giants said next year's 1 is on the table, I'm drafting 3rd if I'm the Titans. Like I
want the Giants first.
Easy pick for me personally.
You got 2 top 5 picks.
Yeah, and it just depends on where you're at with. And look, I shouldn't say that necessarily because I haven't done enough work on the quarterbacks. But what I have seen, like, I'm not so enamored that I'm like, you cannot move out of this pick if you're the Titans at number 1. If you can utilize a team who's super motivated and you can get another day 2 pick in this draft, a 2nd or 3rd, plus next year's 1st from the Giants, who might not be good.
That's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to start a rookie quarterback if you trade it to him.
Because I like Ward more and more the more I watch him. But if I have the Titans first and the Giants first next year, I bet I'm getting Ward or better.
It would have to be a situation where it doesn't matter. Like, offer all you want. We're not moving out of this pick because Ward is the guy.
Because Andrew Luck's coming out, and I can't get away.
If that's not how you feel, then you say, thank you very much. I'll take those picks. You can go get your quarterback now, and we'll build the rest of it around the next quarterback, and maybe we'll get lucky with another quarterback later in this draft.
I lean more and more the more we talk through it. When we started hit record on the podcast, I thought, boy, I'm going to sit there with Ward and just take it. But
yeah, and
I could write a story where Dart's a better player in 3 years, let alone whoever next year's guy is.
I mean, I'm not even Dart's not.
I don't even care about Dart, right?
Yeah, I don't care about Dart, and I'm not even super high on him.
I'm not either.
But you take a swing on Dart or Shuck or whoever else. You know, there's a lot of good backup style quarterbacks. Develop yourself.
I just can't go with Levis and one of the bad Allens as my only quarterback. I got to do better than that. I mean, at least give me Winston or somebody, right?
4th round guy, but again, it's like it's not about who your quarterback is this year if you move out of one. So I wouldn't even worry about it that much. I develop a backup quarterback that you draft in the 4th round, but just get everything else better because they have a lot of other needs,
Oh yeah, tons.
So
I think the Titans have more needs than the Giants.
Yeah, I mean they're in a different place.
At least Giants, they have a Neighbors and Lawrence and right. They got a couple guys.
That brings us to where we're at. Pick 4, the New England Patriots.
All right. They would love 2 quarterbacks to go in the top 3.
And they're listening to offers too, besides that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you'd listen to offers. I mean, I would move away even after signing a corner and signing all the defensive guys possible. If Carter or Hunter is clearly the best one out there, I'm dangling him like crazy. I like those players, but my needs are on offense. That might be the guy that somebody gives you a lot for to get to 4. Otherwise, I don't know who comes up to 4 or who goes to 4 for what player.
I don't even want to. Actually, it's a bad term. Listen, every team is going to listen to offers. What are the teams that are like? Who's the team that called all 31 other teams before round 1 and be like, hey, we're open for business kind of.
We're
thing.
looking to go backwards.
Yeah. And I would say the New England Patriots are one of those teams. I would say that the Titans should be willing to listen for especially one of those top 3 picks.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a little bit more difficult for a team to come up from 6 or 7, but maybe you get the next 2 first-round picks from a team instead of 1 too. But it would take a pretty big haul probably to get that much further down if you're the Tennessee Titans, I think, from 1. But I think the New England Patriots would be one of those teams where I'd be like, oh yeah, they would actually prefer if a team calls them and move out of there a little bit.
Like I'm not thrilled about taking Membo or Ted McMillan or whoever at 4. Just because most years those guys go 10 or 11 or whatever. The Saints are one. I just don't. The Saints and I don't see football the same way.
No,
but if I were them, I would trade down over and over and over and get 1 million picks that are cheap.
And I'd be in a completely different place, and they'll probably trade up.
They'll probably trade up for a defensive tackle or something. And right.
We talked about a little bit at the top, and again, like Jacksonville, Las Vegas, the Jets. I can see that going a lot of ways. I can see the Raiders moving down a few spots and then taking a running back, similar to what the Lions did a couple of years ago, because they traded back and then drafted Gibbs at running back. Like makes you feel a little bit better about drafting the running back early, and maybe you're in the top 10. So listening to offers, but I think New England, Carolina would be the next one for me at number 8. Let's talk about them a little bit at the top. Like that's the team for me that I'm like, okay. Who wants to get up and snatch, say, Membo or Will Campbell or one of these offensive linemen maybe in front of New Orleans, Chicago, San Francisco, Dallas, Miami? All those teams could take an offensive lineman potentially if there's only that one small group of tackles that are available. And maybe a team like Miami at 13 is like, oh, well, I got to get in front of 10 if I need a blank.
That's interesting because I do keep coming back to, and you've mentioned this several times, Jets, Saints, Bears, Niners, even Dallas, Miami is O-line row there. I mean, that's 5 out of 6 or 7 teams that O-line's going to be high on their priority list. If New England grabs Membo at 4, does Miami go to 5 or 6 for Campbell? You know what I mean? Like, does one of those teams be like, I know there aren't offensive tackles only, but these 2 are the best 2 O-linemen in the league or in the draft, and I have so many needs on my O-line if I'm Dallas or the Niners or Miami that I move up. Right. I'm just trying to think who wants to move up.
And especially what would be the position to go up? And here's the other thing, and this kind of ties in as well. Actually, you know what? I'm going to save this part. There's a position that is fascinating to me in the 2025 NFL draft, and can't really pin anybody down. Everyone kind of looks at this position differently, but the league has told us how they look at the position.
Okay.
And that's wide receiver. I want to hold off on that. And
I'm going to say tight end.
No, well, tight end is I think I know what the league feels about tight end. I think I know what the league feels about some other positions in the first round where I think people are getting it really wrong. Analysts that are projecting the draft. But offensive tackle specifically in this draft, if you don't draft Membo or Banks, maybe Connerly later in the first round, like you just start running out of offensive tackles.
Yeah.
If the question is, okay, it takes two to tango, what position is a team moving up for in this draft to draft a player? Well, quarterback's one. We talked about that.
Free agency says O-line.
Offensive
but this
tackle
draft doesn't imply O-line. Yeah.
You can get a guard in round 2.
Mm-hmm.
There's no tackle in round 2 for you. So if you don't get it in round 1, then okay, good luck. Maybe next year you'll find a tackle, right? And I feel like every team is like, well, next year maybe we'll get that tackle, right? Mm-hmm. So I would say offensive tackle would be one of those positions. And would it be Banks? Would it be Membo? Do you view Will Campbell as a tackle? Connerly? It just starts to dry up really quick with like, this guy is a starting offensive tackle in the NFL.
Especially if Simmons could show he was healthy and, like
big one, right?
It's just all dollars. I mean, is it more cost effective to move from 15 to 8 to get a tackle, even if it's Connerly, who no one's even putting in the top 15, but he's a tackle? Or is it more effective to try to find one on the open market, which you can't? You know what I mean? Like the cap guy might be like, I don't care what it takes to go up and get your left tackle. Just trade 3 draft picks to get him because we can't get one anywhere else. And there's only 2 in the draft. Might not be a bad draft to be Josh Connerly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, you're making yourself some money. If you got 30 arms and you're over 300 pounds and you're athletic, you're
raking tape out there.
Whether or not you're going to be good in the NFL or not, you're making some money right now.
Yeah. I mean, cap guys' owners would be like, trade whatever you have to go get that guy because we can't get him. And then we're going to franchise him, and then we're going to 5th-year option him. I mean, like,
I can't make a mock draft without Connerly in the first round.
Right. And maybe we're making the mistake and he should be 10.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Not like going to the Rams neighborhood or, I mean, like he should be.
Like, you just start looking at prospects. Okay, who checks off all the boxes? Who has good tape? Who is not an outlier height, weight, speed-wise? Because we want to throw speed rushers up there. How many teams are going to draft a edge rusher like Jalen Walker, who's 6'1", 245 with short arms? Not very many teams are going to do that. So maybe you should put Josh Connerly ahead of Jalen Walker in some of your mock drafts.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I had my initial one. I had Simmons going 4, but I gave him a way benefit of the doubt in terms of health. I mean, that's not going to happen.
We'll find out. He's actually got that workout, which will be one of the biggest workouts of this draft series. Like this whole draft process. That late April workout for Josh Simmons, because he could go number 4 overall if he was 100% healthy, and he could go in the second
left tackle.
Right.
I mean, real quick, teams do trade up for edge pass rushers, but I don't know that I would in this draft. I mean, that's one spot that you can kind of stick and pick, and a guy should follow you.
Tons of defensive tackles. Do all these teams start to wait on those positions and force the other positions that they can't get later in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round? One other position, wide receiver, that I think is fascinating, that I think some analysts might be getting wrong where they're projecting guys right now. Next.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown. Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Okay. We just talked about some very important workouts. I would say the Michigan workout is really big because of multiple players that are going to work out and potentially a couple of top 10 guys we're talking about right now. Are they going to slide? Would they be players that teams are trying to trade up and get? That's Mason Graham and Will Johnson at defensive tackle and cornerback, respectively. Cornerbacks are making some money now. We just saw a $30 million a year contract signed yesterday. So,
I mean, to your point, you've said this before. What if Will Johnson runs a 4.4 flat? Like all of a sudden, we're talking about him maybe at 5.
Oh, it's very different. Right.
Yeah.
And then I would say the other one is Tet McMillan. I think Tet McMillan and Will Johnson are very much in that same, like, okay, do you run a 4.55 or do you run a 4.47? That is not that big of a difference. It probably shouldn't change the evaluation, but it's probably the difference between going top 10 or in the 20s.
It definitely will change eval. Yeah.
The highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL, Matt, now is who?
Jamar Chase, right? I think he passed Garrett. Yeah.
You're telling me that Tet McMillan and Luther Burden are going to fall out of the first round like I've seen in some mock drafts? They're not going to go in the top 20. Not only are they going to go high, that's one of the positions I think if you ask me, okay, well, who's coming up? Who's coming up to pick 8? Well, the team that wants to draft the first wide receiver this year, that's the team that's moving up to number 8 after Ted McMillan runs 4.47. Or the Luther Burden one is really the one that's weird for me, man. He is a dude. His ability is ridiculous unless he's like
a bad dude or something,
running like a black market puppy ring. I don't know what
right.
be doing off the field. Yeah, he's
his game translates to today's NFL.
He's going early. Not only is he not falling out of the first round, he's not getting out of the top half of the first round. I don't think, Matt. He's not getting out of the top 20. So wide receiver is going to go high, and
Golden's going high too.
And specifically, if it's not a strong wide receiver class, they're going to go even higher because the team again is going to look and say, "Oof, these third round guys are all right, but this guy's a starter. I got to go get him." And they're going to go up and get a wide receiver. So I would say that's maybe the other position.
It's a great point about Chase. Jefferson already was breaking the bank. There's plenty of those guys out there making tons of money. But boy, there were also a lot of teams that didn't get that wide receiver that they need. I'm really looking at the Chargers. They didn't get the number 2 guy that everybody thought they did. Houston isn't going to have Tank Dell, and they're going to replace him with Kirk, but they're still short. I mean, a lot of these teams could be very interested in another receiver. Is that an active move that Denver makes? I mean, I keep coming back to a trade-up team too, and maybe this is a team that fits the bill, is Seattle. I mean, all of a sudden, after the Geno and DK trades, they got all these day 2 picks, and they need offense.
And you know what? They lost their downfield, big-bodied wide receiver.
Right.
McMillan to Seattle is a really nice fit.
Give me something different than JSN.
Super complimentary. Yeah.
And then they went and got Kupp, who's exactly like JSN.
Right. Exactly.
Which was a weird move to me.
And some of these veteran, Kupp, or whether it's there's a ton of older veteran wide receivers that are still unsigned, and maybe those players will wait until after the draft, and maybe teams are waiting until right before the draft or after the draft to try to get things straight there. But they wouldn't even preclude any of these teams from drafting a young wide receiver.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point because I did just do my mock. I only had 2 receivers in the first round, and that didn't settle with me. But money talks. I mean, I think that's the thing here is let's see where the money is going in free agency. I mean, if Dan Moore is getting $20 million and Jalen Moore is getting the same, just be a tackle. I mean, maybe even like the BC kid sneaks into the end of first round, or you know what I mean? Like just because you're a tackle.
You can't even get a team's number 2 wide receiver in free agency because they're signing T. Higgins too.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Who's hitting the market? The old guys, the Diggs and Coopers and Cupps and those guys that have so many warts.
By the way, Seattle Seahawks, there we go. That is a move up team, not only because of what we just laid out there, but they do have 5 picks in the top
3 rounds.
3 rounds now. Yeah. In the top 92, they've got 5 selections, 2 seconds and 2/3.
Put Ted McMillan there for Darnold, and much different than JSN and Kupp. And okay. You can get guards and centers later.
Yeah, looking at the trade chart, they got pick 50 and 52. So about 400 points. Their pick at 18 is worth 900 points. So that gets you up to 1,300 points. You're at 10 Chicago Bears there.
I like it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if any of the real contenders, like teams to pick at the end of the first, is any of them one player away in their opinion?
They're all aggressive too, right? Like Baltimore, I could see moving up or just trading out of the first round completely.
I think a lot of them could just go down.
Yeah. The Minnesota Vikings, we already talked about on yesterday's show. I think that's for sure a trade down team. The Vikings only have 4 picks in this draft, I think. Mm-hmm. One of them just got later because they traded for a backup running back. Green Bay Packers always willing to move.
I was going to mention Washington, but they gave up so many picks in like the Tunsil trade. I don't know if they can go up. I thought they might just go up to go get Ted McMillan or whatever, but because they're aggressive.
Yeah, they've already done their work. Now they're light on.
They've already done their work.
They have no 3rd, no 5th. So only 5 picks right now for the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, I mean, they can't be a go-up team. One more go-up team that's a little bit worse. Because the Bears were so active with big men, could they look at it like we're 1 player away? But I don't know where from 10, who do you go up to do that with? I mean, that's what I couldn't understand. I didn't have a target in mind, unless it's like Carter at 4 or Hunter at 4 or something like that.
You're not trading up for a running back, right?
No. You're not trading up for Warren. There's so many good edge guys. You might as well just hang there, I still think they could use D-line help.
And then the other thing is, okay, round 2, Cleveland, New York, Tennessee, Jacksonville, Las Vegas, New England, Chicago. Maybe that's where the move up is into the end of round 1.
Mm-hmm. I'm definitely thinking much like the Levis draft, Dart and Shuck could get a lot of early day 2 attention from the teams that missed out. I know it seems early for Shuck, but I don't think it is.
Moving up for a wide receiver, moving up for
pretty deep corner draft. I don't know. I mean, it's not easy to find the targets.
Yeah.
Again, anyone that's a tackle should be happy.
Yeah, but it is, and this is just kind of a message to mock drafters out there. It's nice. It's nice when you move your team down in the simulator and you get a whole bunch of extra picks. It's harder to find the teams and the players that are moving up.
Way harder. Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks everybody for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love and appreciate all the everydayers out there. Subscribe on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. And of course, check out any of the other 200 programs here at Locked On, including Locked On NFL Draft. Get prepped for NFL Draft season. Matt and I back tomorrow right here. Get those questions in, by the way, at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL.
Oh, yeah.
And the YouTube comments for this week's mailbag. Peacock and Williamson.